Welcome to the place where money, power, and history collide. And remember, nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Today I will move away from charts. I won't strain your mind with lines bouncing up and down on the screen, nor will I fix your gaze on faces. I'm not here with the eye-straining algorithms of economics channels, nor with complex formulas and meaningless jargon. Today, we will not focus on the applauded actors on the stage, but on those who write history behind the curtain. Imagine a robbery, as we usually picture it: masked people, excitement, fear, adrenaline, and an escape plan. None of that exists here. There are no guns drawn, no hostages taken, no banks stormed, no forced entries, and no alarms sounding. What we are going to talk about today is not simple interest rates, but one of the greatest financial crimes of modern history. And you've probably heard its name, but you've never truly seen it. Maybe it appeared briefly in the side column of a newspaper. Maybe it was mentioned in passing in a documentary, but you never really understood it. Today, capitalism is presented to us as a fairy tale, under the banner of free markets and freedom. Competition, entrepreneurship, individual effort. We're told it's a level playing field where everyone competes under equal conditions. But when we look at the scenes of history, we see that the first great capital structures were built not on freedom, but on monopoly. Think of the Dutch East India Company. There were corporations that acted like states. They had their own armies, could declare war, and forcibly controlled ports and trade routes. These companies were not born from free competition. They were born from royal charters, monopoly rights, and state backing. Capitalism did not emerge as a romantic idea, but through accounting ledgers and the use of force. History's first rhyme whispers this truth to us. Those who controlled the flow of money held power. What began as coincidence turned into a rule, manifesting in different forms, in different places, across different eras of history, but its essence never changed. For years, history imposed a lie on us, the story that money emerged from barter. Imagine this. Before money was invented, people survived through barter, exchanging goods. You raise sheep, I grow corn. But when I want sheep, you may not need corn at that moment. This made meeting immediate needs difficult. Barter was hard, and so money was invented. This narrative is simple, logical, and innocent, but it is not true. Anthropologists, archaeologists, and historians have never found evidence of such a system. What they did find instead were debt systems. People borrowed from one another, kept records, maintained accounts, and lived within mutual obligations. Money did not emerge to make people's lives easier. It emerged so states could feed their armies, collect taxes, and solidify their authority. What kept an empire standing was always a disciplined army, never markets. And what sustained that army was a payment system everyone was forced to accept. From its very beginning, money was a system of control, not a tool of freedom as we are told. The empire tells you, pay your taxes in this currency. Suddenly, everyone needs that currency, because if you don't pay, punishment follows. Now let's examine money more closely. Money is a belief that people will accept it tomorrow just as they do today. It is not an object. It is not precious metal. It is not paper. Its value does not come from the quality of the paper or the ink printed on it. What gives it value is collective acceptance. When that trust disappears, even the greatest empires collapse. That's why major empires rarely fall because of wars between them. They fall through balance sheets. Before enemy soldiers enter the city, the monetary system collapses. Trust is lost. Belief ends. And then everything falls like dominoes. History is filled with countless examples of this, but let's look at just a few, because the past is the key to the future. And the only way to understand what we are living through today is to see yesterday. Let me take you to ancient Rome. As Rome expanded its territories through countless wars, as its armies grew in influence, costs increased, wars became expensive, resources became insufficient. Defending the empire demanded more and more funding. Eventually, traditional tax revenues were no longer enough, and the solution, simple yet deadly, was found. The silver content in coins was reduced, while the same coins remained remained in circulation. The symbols were the same, but the value inside was quietly diminished. At first, no one noticed, but as prices rose, merchants realized the currency had lost value and adjusted prices upward. The people began to lose trust in the empire. Belief eroded. Society began to rot from within. Today, we may not carry silver coins with reduced purity in our pockets, but the same system continues. Central banks print money, value is diluted, inflation rises. Now let's return to the present. The stage is far more complex. Central banks, investment banks, hedge funds, algorithms, invisible networks. The modern financial world is like a massive theater. On the surface, there is the market, competition, prices, buyers and sellers. Everything appears free, but beneath the stage lies a massive steel framework. Its job is to hold the stage upright, and it remains invisible. Hedge funds, major banks, and financial institutions are that framework. You don't see them, but they support the entire structure. And at the very heart of that framework was a button, hidden for years, unseen by almost everyone. LIBOR. LIBOR. It sounds technical, boring, distant. For most people it means nothing, and that's exactly why this story is so big. Because the most effective robberies in history happen when no one notices. No one shouts, no weapons are drawn, no glass is shattered, banks aren't stormed, vaults aren't forced, no alarm sound, only numbers move. And those moving numbers silently reshape the lives of billions of people. People experience interest rates on credit card statements when buying property or taking out loans. But the real story, the one you're shown, is written behind the curtain. Interest is not a natural result of markets. It's not simply the numerical output of supply and demand. It is power, written in mathematics. And this is where the remote control comes in. LIBOR was the on-off button. LIBOR stands for London Interbank Offered Rate. It was the world's interest compass. Trillions of dollars in loans, mortgages, derivatives, student debt, and government bonds were tied to it. If you had a mortgage, your rate was likely linked to LIBOR. If you bought corporate bonds, their yield depended on LIBOR. If you took out a student loan, your interest rate was affected by LIBOR. 2 out of every 3 people on Earth were influenced by this number, without ever knowing it. So how was this rate determined? Not by free market data, not by complex algorithms, not by independent calculations. Every morning, a handful of banks were asked a simple question. At what interest rate would you lend to another bank today? They submitted estimates. Those estimates were averaged, and that average became LIBOR. This is where the darkest game begins. Banks could manipulate LIBOR with small adjustments, and those small adjustments created billion-dollar consequences. One bank could push LIBOR slightly down to profit from derivatives. Another could push it up to make its balance sheet look healthier. This wasn't a market game. It was a backstage agreement. Banks coordinated daily through messages, adjusting LIBOR to serve their own interests. For years, no one truly wanted to see it. Regulators were silent. Auditors looked away. The media didn't ask. When the LIBOR scandal finally broke, the world's largest banks paid billions in fines. Barclays, UBS, Deutsche Bank, Citigroup, JP Morgan. All were found guilty, but no one went to prison. Executives retired, resigned, or moved to other banks. No real accountability followed, because it was framed as a mistake. A few bad apples. Isolated cases, but this wasn't a chain of errors, it was a design. Those who held power wrote the rules and made them flexible enough to avoid paying the real price. So we must ask ourselves, if interest is the price of money over time, and if that price can be manipulated, was the market ever truly free, or were we just watching the performance on stage? We were told stories of free markets, supply and demand, invisible hands. But in reality, power relations were at work. Big players set prices freely and tilted the table in their favor, and the system was designed to allow it. The British Empire ruled India not through constant military force, but through accounting and taxation systems. Wealth was quietly extracted and centralized. Famines were framed as natural disasters while millions died. A civilization collapsed not through gunfire, but through ledgers. LIBOR worked the same way. No one woke up thinking, "I was robbed today." But millions paid endless interest, earned less, borrowed more, through mechanisms hidden behind technical language. So ask yourself, if money is a belief, if finance is a theater, if history rhymes, where are you in this play? An actor, an extra, or just an audience member? Most of us are spectators. We applaud without fully understanding what's happening on stage. We go home when the curtain closes, but the play continues, and it shapes our lives. Financial literacy is about seeing behind the curtain, understanding the system, playing the game by its rules, instead of being silently robbed. And now we reach the end. Ask yourself this: why is one of the greatest financial crimes in history barely known by the public? Why was LIBOR presented as a technical detail? Why didn't this story enter school textbooks? Why is it mentioned only in footnotes, even in economics departments? Perhaps the answer is simple. For the system to function smoothly, some stories must remain obscure. If people don't understand these mechanisms, they won't question them. And if they don't question them, they won't push for change. LIBOR was replaced by a new system, SOFR. It was said to be more transparent, more reliable, but the core question remains. Who controls it? Who oversees it? And what really changed? You are at the place where money, power, and history collide. The curtain is closing, but the play isn't over. Actors change. Sets are rebuilt. The stage evolves. But the script remains the same. Power, money, control. History teaches us this: those who control the flow of money always hold power, and that control is most effective when it is invisible. LIBOR was a scandal, but only one example. These mechanisms still exist, perhaps under different names, perhaps in different forms, but they exist. So the question is this: what will you do with this knowledge? Ignore it? Or start looking around, curious about which games are being played? Because knowing is the first step. Understanding is the second. And if enough people know and understand, perhaps the third step can be taken. Change. The curtain has closed. The lights are off. But you've seen backstage now, and you will never look at it the same way again. If you enjoyed the video and the content, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.